When you think about St. Louis and beer, of course you're going to think of Anheuser-Busch, and yet that's not the first name you should think of. You should think of Adam Lemp. What he does is he brings this, this new style of beer. It's a lighter beer. It's not that really dark ales that the English brought with them. Well, the Germans really took on to this notion of bringing it into the city of St. Louis and introducing it, and St. Louisans loved it. So very quickly, Adam Lemp became this father of the lager beer and introduced a new wave of culture really in the city. Well, very quickly, Lemp realized that he had a market on this new beer and started employing a number of people, built up the plant. It's a pretty extensive plant, and the other thing that he learned to do was he followed the latest ideas about pasteurization, about refrigeration. So as soon as these things were coming into play, he was incorporating them into his plant. That allowed him to continue to be sort of in the forefront of everybody else that was brewing beer in St. Louis. And he just made his fortune by being smart. As the turn of the 20th century begins, there is rumblings from the temperance women, people who are beginning to see that saloons and breweries are really not a good idea for the home life, for just the culture in general. It's really, we find that America had an alcohol problem. They really were drinking way too much, and the women were really concerned about this. So the temperance movement begins, and the breweries start to fear that something's in the works in the way of a prohibition amendment because the talk is out there. So many of the breweries just decide they're not going to fight it. Adam's son, William, by the time we get to the eve of prohibition, decides that they're not even going to fight this. They're just going to close their doors. They have made enough money for everybody in the family to actually be fine. They sell off their top logo of Falstaff beer, and they close their doors forever. So they do not even try to fight the prohibition movement. They're done. So really, we don't see the name Lemp as a brewery after 1920. And the very first part of the Anheuser-Busch legacy is Eberhard Anheuser, and he founded his first brewery in the 1850s and picked it up. He was a soap maker, but decided to purchase this small, struggling brewery. Once he brings on Adolphus Busch, they introduce Budweiser in 1876, and really at that point, Anheuser-Busch doesn't look back. They have a huge growing every year, a growing output of barrels of beer per year, and it's not until the 1890s that they really begin to take over Lemp's brewery. But once they do, Lemp always becomes sort of second in the running to Anheuser-Busch. So Anheuser-Busch has a really smart way of handling this notion of prohibition. They decide that they're going to play by the law. They're not going to fight it. That's really not a smart thing to do, of course. So they have this huge plant already active. In the years prior to prohibition, they kind of saw it coming, and they decided that they would start this product called Bevo. It was a malts beverage, and they thought, we're going to test this out. We're going to test it and test it and test it until we get it right. And Bevo became this product that they entered prohibition with. They also continued to make Budweiser, oddly, because they could make it just under the limit that was illegal. So it was less than 0.5%, almost no alcohol, but they made it. So they could continue to keep that Budweiser name out there. That's perfect if you're wanting to keep your name and your marketing and the strategies all in place. They were the company that comes out at the other end ready to make beer at Repeal Day. It's interesting to think what it might have been like, but I think it's hard to take that away from St. Louis. And if there weren't the Germans, there wouldn't be the beer industry. So then already St. Louis seems like it would be a very small community that maybe never grew up to be the fourth largest city in 1904. And it would have maybe not been the home of the World's Fair. I think all of those things build on each other. And so, we have to thank those immigrants who came very early to make St. Louis what it is today.